And so the man he's walking by himself and he's feeling relatively comfortable. And then he opens his eyes and looks to his left, and there is this strange thing called a shadow that's following him, pursuing him, stalking him, if you will. And so he begins to run really, really fast. And the faster that he runs, the faster the shadow follows him. And then he dies out of exhaustion, because the shadow is something that can never leave you. It's like having experienced a trauma in your childhood, and it matters very little, how you deal with your life, where you go, what you do. It's always in the corner, waiting for the right time to come out and just demolish everything you've created. And so he dies, and he goes to either Brahman or Vishnu or Krishna, and he says, I tried my best to run away from the shadow. And Krishna basically tells him, the only thing you could have done or should have done was to find a shade somewhere, gone, sat under the tree somewhere, and you would have realized that the shadow would have gone away. And then peace and solace in the Garden of Eden would have been given to you. A very easy way. All of us, in some ways, that's what desires create. Desires create shadows. And kind of like the story of Sisyphus, we keep pursuing this desire and that desire in hopes that eventually rest and comfort will be given to us, only to realize at the end of the day that you're just really, really exhausted. The other story is told to us by Ramana Maharishi. It's a person that Carl Jung was very much interested in, but he never went to India. He did go to India, but really never had the desire to meet with Ramana Maharishi, saying that everywhere in India that I go, I smell or see the presence of Maharishi. There is no reason for me to go there. And I think the other part that perhaps Jung cunningly never talked about was that, icons, kind of like Maharishi, like Jesus, like the Buddha, we like to keep them at an arm's length. We don't like to get too close to them. We don't like to see too much of them, because then we can see the human side. And once you get exposed to someone's human side, then the mystery goes away, the fascination goes away. And you kind of see them as your own, as someone who just is like you, quacks like you, walks like you. And once the mystery goes away, your connection to the sacred disappears. So what you have in the story is about a stonecutter. And it's about a man who was born. Perhaps he had the passion, perhaps he was just following in the footsteps of his own clan or his own father. And he began to cut stones. He would go early morning to the mountain with his chisel and hammer and begin to crack, these rocks and put them in a basket, take them to town and sell them. And then go to Safeway, buy some milk and bread and cheese for her family. And one day as he's going to Safeway, he sees this man. And the man is sitting on a horse, and he's wearing this like kingly outfit. And this humble stonecutter says, I want to be like him. I want to be like this man seated on a horse with this gown. And the gods apparently liked him very much. So in a blink of an eye, he is turned into this king. He's now sitting on the horse, and people are bowing to him. They like him. They respect him. And he says, this is much better than being a stonecutter, because I have all this power. But he's sitting on this horse, on this leather seat, and it's, say, Stockton or Merced or Roseville, temperature is 955, and he's sweating like a pig. And he said, man, I thought being a king was good, but I don't think it is. It's not very powerful either, because what's most powerful right now is the sun. Because it's making my life uncomfortable, and despite all the power I may have, I can't control the heat of the sun. And he prays. He says, he prays saying, God, please make me the sun, the most powerful of all things. And so in an instant, he becomes the sun. And now he scorches people with a tremendous amount of heat, making everyone's lives miserable. And the sun, being the most powerful now, he's very, very happy about who and what he is. Then one day the sun comes up and comes to realize that despite all of his power, its rays are not going out. And he looks out and there is this tiny little black cloud. It's a black cloud, not allowing the sun to shine its rays upon people and making their lives misery. And he says, I can't believe that this tiny little black cloud is more powerful than I am. I want to be the cloud. And he becomes a cloud, and he, creates, storms and hurricanes and all that stuff. And he says, yes, I'm very happy now because I'm the most powerful of all things. This is what we call being covetedness, that you lust after power, you covet power, you want to be that power, you want to embody the power, and you want to be deemed as the strongest thing out there. And then one day, as this cloud is just creating havoc on people's lives, comes to feel as if something is just pushing and moving it, left and right, looks out and there is a wind. The wind is just pushing this tiny little cloud all over the place and says, man, I thought I would be the most powerful thing on the face of the planet, but I guess I'm not. And prays again, I wish to be the wind. And again, in an instant, he becomes the wind. And now he turns the cars over and, demolishes houses and, all sorts of things that he can find. And then one day, as the wind is moving around, making a mess of everything, it hits against something that remains unmoved. And looks out there, and there is this mountain. He says, man, more powerful than the wind is the mountain. I'd like to become the mountain. And the gods like him enough to make him into the mountain. And now, if you want to build a road, you have to go through the mountain. But the mountain is far too powerful. It's rock solid. No matter how big a bulldozer or a jackhammer, the mountain refuses to be cracked. And then one day, as this mountain is just refusing to make life happen for anyone, it hears something very strange. And he looks out there at the very top. There is this tiny little man with a hammer and a chisel. And with his tiny little hammer and chisel, he's just slowly, just breaking away piece by piece. And the mountain is amazed, saying, well, more powerful than the mountain is is this man, this tiny little pathetic man with a hammer and chisel. I want to become it. And then the gods like him enough again to make him into this man. And then all of a sudden he comes to realize that I can't believe what just has happened. I thought that being the most powerful was being this man seated on a horse, and then being the sun, and then being the cloud, and then being the wind, and then being the mountain, and ultimately becoming the man that I've always been. Now, the truth is, first, it's very difficult to see what you're made for in life. And, someone like Jesus Christ, someone like Beethoven, someone like Mozart, someone like Van Gogh, they have it really, really easy because they come out of their mother's womb at the age of 5 or 6. They just know they're a pianist. They just know that they're an artist of sorts. The rest of us, we really have to, we have to travel the world to figure out where exactly we belong. And it's disappointing, it's heart-wrenching because many of us won't ever get there. It's like you go to a buffet, you eat everything that's out there, and in the end you realize you don't really know what you want to have on your plate anymore. It's very confusing. And then you kind of just give up. You look at your friend, you look at your mom and say, Mom, just put anything on the plate. I'm tired of making choices and coming to realize that my choices don't really end up well. That's to some extent the metaphorical food that you're talking about, Charles. Not so much what goes through your mouth, but the sort of choices, the psychological nourishments, emotional nourishments, intellectual nourishments that we give ourselves, and at times physical, of course. And I think in many cases, that's our story. When is enough enough? For someone like Mozart, his life is set, even if you give him the riches, at the end of the day, he wants to be locked up in a room with his piano. He doesn't care if he lives in a mansion or if he's in a studio. He has a very, very easy life. You know, if you're dealing with someone like, say, Jesus, for example, his life is also very easy. I mean, remember, no life is easy. Every life is complicated. It has its own set of issues. But it's easy in the sense that you just know at the age of 12, this is who you are. You know, you may have physical parents, but they're certainly not your spiritual parents. You read the Bible, but what you really want is the Spirit of God flowing through your veins. I mean, that's really, really an awesome place to be in life at such a young age. You know, Khalil Gibran, you know, he has a love affair with writing, with thinking, with feeling, with painting, with sketching. And his life is very easy. Someone like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, they just know at a very young age. You know, they don't have to be like the stone cutter. One day becoming this, another day becoming that. You know, it's kind of like the way that it used to be for our grandparents. You look at someone, you like them, you marry them, and that's basically it. You know, through thick and thin, you just stay with this person. For us, it's very, very difficult. First of all, if you happen to be an introvert, in other words, things on the outside, they are good to have, but at the end of the day, you realize that there is something about you that has lost something. You don't know what it has lost. You know, you have your parents, everything's perfectly fine about your life. It's kind of like the story of the Buddha. You come from a great culture, you have great parents, you have a great wife, you have great children or a great child, and you don't even have to look for a job because, you know, once your father passes away, you're right now a prince, he'll give you his kingdom. You have an immense amount of power in your life, but then all of a sudden he comes to realize at a very, very young age, 16, 17, 18, 19, depending on, you know, what kind of books you've read about Buddhism. This guy says, yeah, you know, I like my culture, but it's just not enough. I like my dad, I like my mom, they're not enough. I like the fact that I'm married, that's great, but she's not enough. I like the fact that I have a child and I love my kid, that's not enough. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I want to let go of everything and go into the forest. And it's a very strange place to be because most of the people on this planet, they want a mother, they want a father, they want a job, they want to be a king or a queen of sorts, they want to be in a good relationship, they want children, they want to be a king, they want to rule over other people, perhaps justly or unjustly, it doesn't really matter. And yet you have this kid, and we're talking about 3,000 years ago, money is tough to come by, you know, life is really, really complicated, you only have two classes, the rich and the poor, there is no middle class. And, you know, you wake up in the morning, you work really, really hard like a mule. And by the time you get home, you just fall apart. You have zero energy to do much of anything. And yet you could sustain life. You didn't really have very many traumas inside. You were social and you were sociable and you were kind, you were decent, you had integrity. And you have this kid at the age of 16 or 17 says, I don't want any of this stuff. I mean, that's really strange. Why the hell would you want to do that? Why would you want to run away from the luxuries of life and then assume a life that contains so much hardship? You go against life, which is all of a sudden you become attracted to monks. What the hell do monks do? They sit. They sit without having their body move. And that goes against the biology of what it means to be a human being. Your body is active, it's engaged, it wants to do things. And yet you choose a life that is completely passive. Passive physically, passive emotionally. I mean, that goes back to his question. You know, I just don't want to care anymore. I don't care about people. I don't care about any of those things because emotions mean nothing at the end of the day. Okay, so you care for something and they die. All right, so you grieve. You go through the grieving process. You do the grieving rituals. And then you forget. Why the hell would I want to allow my emotions to toy with me for like 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks and then be forgotten? And then me having never learned anything from these emotions. I don't want to be this cloud being toyed by this wind. You know, so that's what you call an introvert. In other words, you're born, you have this thing inside you that is never satisfied with anything. You know. Now, the problem with being an introvert is this. When you're an introvert, you look around you and everybody in life is doing something. And everybody in life is finding value in the things that they're doing. And then you sit back. I mean, consider the following. Rock assumes his question to be interesting. Charles says his question is interesting. Julian says his question is interesting. You want to raise your hand and ask your question. You say, no question is interesting. You know, the idea that like black lives matter or brown lives matter or this life matter or that life matters. And I suppose perhaps the more grand question would be, why should any life matter really? People come, people go, they're forgotten. What life really matters? You know, even if you were to say the life of Malcolm X matters, or the life of Mahatma Gandhi matters, or the life of Plato matters, or the life of Jesus Christ matters, the truth is ultimately they all become like a belief system in which there is no life, there is no spirit. People just like to believe because it makes them feel good about who and what they are. Right? And so the difficulty with being an introvert is you look around you and everybody's going somewhere, everybody's doing something, and then you begin to self-hate. Why am I not being like other people? Why can't I be sociable? Why do I feel so awkward? What the hell is wrong with me? And then you begin to have a good amount of resentment inside you, and you feel profoundly incompetent because other people are relatively going to school and they're having a good time. They have their bachelor's and master's and PhD. They're prospering in life, and here you are. You may have gone to school, you know, you may even have a master's or a PhD, but you feel inwardly as a loser, like a loser, and you don't know what to do with yourself. And so you become very much like the stone cutter. You know, you say, well, maybe what I have lost inside has something to do with what the world has to offer me. I just don't know what that is yet. So you become a person who graduates from high school. Then you say, nah, that's not working out for me. Then you become a person who graduates from college. Then you say, it was good, but that's not really doing it for me. Then you go to college. Then you go to a 4-year school. Then you get your bachelor's. Then you get your master's. Then you get your PhD. Then you get a job that you've always dreamt, which was being in the classroom and teaching. Then you say, yeah, that's good, but I really want a companion. I mean, remember, our life is very, very much like the stone cutter. We're just like hopping from one thing to another to kind of bring about some value, some meaning to our life that you can look yourself in the mirror and say, yes, this is working out for me. And then you get married and that doesn't work out. I mean, it's great, don't get me wrong. All the things that you're doing are really, really good, but you still are not feeling completely content or happy. And maybe human beings are not meant to be happy. Maybe they're not meant to be content. You know, در اندرون من خسته دل ندانم کیست که من خموشم او در فغان و در غوغاست. I don't know what lives inside me. You know, every time I want to sit, it screams, get up, do something, make yourself into something. Don't be slothful, don't be lazy, don't be an idiot. And I suppose all human beings are condemned by that inner voice that despite all of your achievements, you're still nothing. You still are not doing anything. Your life lacks meaning, you know. And I mean, consider Obama, consider Trump, consider Biden. These are people who are relatively old, about to die. They have everything in life. They have power, they have money, they have fame, they have prestige. And yet they want something more. They want to be the president. They want to rule over the entire world. That's what they want to do. And human beings are condemned. You know, it's very easy to kind of condemn Trump. It's very easy to condemn Biden. It's very easy to condemn, you know, Obama. That may all be true because of their personality, but the truth is there is something just wrong with the human being because they keep wanting something they don't have, and they can't be content with this entire thing that they have, you know. And then what happens, and remember, desires create shadows. That's what desires do. And shadows are very tempting because you say, I'm going to get a PhD. All of a sudden you have a shadow of a Chris, of a Julian, of a Rock, of a Charles saying, I am right now at Laney. This is not a fun place to be. And then you create a shadow. And usually these shadows are created because you go out there, someone has a PhD or someone has a job that you desperately want, or you say, this is a good fit for me. A shadow is created. And you run to capture the shadow, you know. And then eventually you capture it only to realize, yeah, you have a job, you just don't want it anymore. Or it's not as meaningful to you as it once was. Or, you know, you fail to understand the true message of Hinduism or Christianity or Buddhism. that the world is one gigantic toy store and all toys will eventually break. It's called Maya, the world of illusion. And once you follow an illusion or a shadow, eventually you'll come to realize you have it, but it doesn't really mean anything right now to you anymore. So you end up in this place called samsara, or the world of suffering. And most of the shadows, very much like the New Testament, the gospel story, it's part of the world. You gain the world, you pursue the shadow, only to realize at the end of the day you have nothing. You have lots of money, you just don't know what to spend it on anymore. And so you look at your savings account, you have $200,000, you look around you and you say, nothing out there looks interesting. So you look at the world, it means nothing. You look at your savings account and you say, I have all this money, to do what with? Now, I think for most of us, what usually happens, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, is that your salvation, unfortunately, our salvation comes in this way. From a very, very young age to probably when you're like 60 or 70 or 80, you keep accumulating things, And then one day you walk into your house and you realize, man, you have 50 chairs and you have 50 tables and you have 900, this and 900 that. And the house feels cluttered. And then you say, and it takes a while for you to get there. And then you say, I don't even use any of this stuff. The last time I used one of those beautiful chinas was like 50 years ago. The last time I sat in one of those chairs was 25 years ago. The last time I even went to those other bedrooms was like 10 years ago. Maybe I should just get rid of this entire house with everything in it. And then you do something really, really amazing. You want to put stuff just outside on the driveway for people just to take. You don't even want money anymore because you have enough of it in the bank account. You just put big sign, free. And then there is a struggle because what you have, going to his question, whenever you spend time with someone, it doesn't matter what it is. You can spend time with the most abusive person or with the most healthy person. What time does is that it creates stories. Even if those stories are negative, you hate the person. Well, hate creates anger. You know what to do when this person comes home. You're just going to lock yourself in the room, and you're going to write. You're going to cry. You're going to scream. You're going to read the Bible. It doesn't really matter. But at least it's a known environment. It's familiar to you. Once this father comes home and is drunk, you'll just go to your room and you play music. Okay? So your life, for the most part, is very, very familiar. Fear gives your life meaning. Hatred gives you life meaning. You know what to do. They're like GPS to your life. I'm going to watch TV from 5 to 6. 7 o'clock, my father's going to come in. I'm going to run to the bedroom. I'm going to stay there till about noon or midnight, whatever. And so going back to his question, whenever you spend time with anything, it matters very little what it is. You came to my house many times. There came a point where I looked at all the clothes that I have. Some I had worn only once, some I had never worn. And I looked at you and Brian and I said, Chris, I have these suits. I have these sweaters. I have never worn them. Some of them I have worn maybe once, maybe twice. I just don't need them anymore. They're just like, invading my space. Would you like them? If you don't want them, just take them, give them to someone. And there is a good amount of attachment there. These are like when I was a part-time instructor, I was not making very much money. I was very, very poor. I would go to Macy's in Roseville, look for things on sale, buy them, and just save them. And one of the other things about, saving things is you have this idea that this is Chris 5 years from now. It is true this jacket may be too big for him now, but what happens when people age? Well, they gain weight. And this jacket that, looks twice your size when you're 45, it'll fit you exactly just fine. So it's very difficult to let go of any things, to let go of history, both past and future, the stuff you create. So you come to a place, again, when you're 60 or 70, hopefully much sooner and when you're much younger, You say, I just want to put everything on the driveway for people to take. And then you walk, and you come out to your driveway after 5 hours and you realize it's emptied. Everybody has come to your house and they have taken everything that you put out there. And then you go into your house and you say, hello. And now for the first time, you remember how it first felt when you moved into your house. It was empty. You said hello, and you would hear the echo. As it becomes cluttered, you say hello, there is no echo. The sofa captures some of your voice, the pots and pans capture other aspects of your voice, and you say hello and nothing comes back to you, as if your voice is just being stolen by the things you've accumulated. And so part of you is stored in the plates, the other part is stored in this jacket. Now you go home, the house has nothing in it. You say hello, and the house says, hello, Chris, it's been a while. And for the first time, you take this deep breath. It's a sigh of contentment that you're now able and content just having one sofa, one plate, one cup, and you live like a monk and you're extremely happy. And you don't feel lost. There is nothing to grieve over. And I think that is the problem with all of us. You keep reading, you keep accumulating, whether it's ideas or sofas or plates or girlfriends or boyfriends, it doesn't really matter. There comes a point in your life and my life where you say, I just want to give things away anymore. I just don't need them. There was a time I used to be interested in the ideas of Immanuel Kant and his concept of beauty, inspiring, beautiful. But the truth is, I no longer need it. I don't want to go to a classroom and talk about this. And it's a funny thing, Chris. I struggled to find a full-time position, and I found it. And I'm very grateful to have found a job that I'm good at and I'm passionate about. And I think every morning now that I've woken up for the past 2-3 years, every morning I wake up, when I'm driving to campus, I say, should I just call it quits now? Should I retire now? And you have been in my classes for many, many years. You know that when you and I first met in the classroom, I used to scream and shout and be very loud and obnoxious. I used to, use a lot of profanities. Now, I'm mostly monotone. If you pay attention, my voice is relatively tired. And I realize I don't need to shout. I don't need to be obnoxious. I don't really need the attention I once used to, have needed. I am good for the most part, remaining invisible, for people not to like me as much or not like me, period. I know who I am, what my position is in regards to life, as well as death. So your question is, once you have gone through the iron, which is pleasures of the body, or the Hindus would say kama, things that come to you very, very quickly and give you instant gratification. Once you graduate from that stage and you move into artha, it's like making money, saving money, buying a house, or going to school, getting a degree. Once you go through the world of artha and you find yourself a full-time job, eventually you come to realize you want dharma now. You want to find yourself a nice companion. You want to make your house into a home. You want children. You want to be good to your parents. You ask your father every single day, Dad, is there something I can do for you? You're no longer in the stage of karma where you're selfish. You rarely call your mom. You rarely call your dad. You're stingy. You're self-centered, egomaniac. In the world of artha, you're very much the same way, but now you have long-term goals. You want to get your PhD. You want to buy a house. You want to save your money to buy a Tesla. You're a bit more conscious about the environment, how you treat people. And then you move into dharma, and now you're a social animal. Not only do you want to be good to yourself, the kind of food you eat, you want to also be good to your wife, you want to be good to your kids, you want to be good to your parents, you want to be good to your friends, you also want to be good to your boss and your students, all that stuff. Now, there comes a point where, and remember, as long as your life is not in order, as long as you have not had enough sex, and you haven't really understood the anatomy of sex, or if you're allergic to the word sex, as long as you have not really understood what lives inside pleasure, how quickly it comes, what it does to your system, and how quickly it goes away, leaving you bankrupt or empty. As long as you haven't really understood that, there's a good chance that even if you make lots of money, you'll come back to the world of karma and you spend it on drugs, you spend it on alcohol, you spend it on sex, on cheap, ridiculous, infantile things. And that's the only way you could be content with having little instant gratification in life as possible, okay? And then you get to a place of, say, artha, power. Now, all these different stages, they create their own unique sense of intoxication. Doing drugs is intoxicating, man. You will remove the troubles of the world from your shoulders. Drinking is intoxicating. Sex is intoxicating. The fact that you no longer have to think and feel about the difficulties, complexities of life, it's intoxicating. The problem with karma, the world of pleasure, is that its shelf life is maybe 5 hours if you're lucky. And then you're thrown back into life and you realize, you're far too incompetent to deal with all the complexities of life. And the power has its own, intoxication components. Getting a PhD, it makes you very powerful. Students raise their hand, they ask you a question. But you have read the New Testament, you have read the Old Testament, you've read the Bhagavad Gita, you've read the Dhammapada, you've read Tao Te Ching, you've read all the stuff. You haven't just read them, you've understood them. And you've read them for about 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And someone just comes to you, raises their hand, and they just have a belief system. Unexamined, unrefined, raw. They just like to believe because it makes them feel good. And now, the moment they say, the Buddha this, Mahavira that, Muhammad this, Jesus that, you go for the kill. You go for the jugular. You throw at them things they've never heard of, they've never thought about, reflected on, and all of a sudden they're pushed into silence. And you've abused your power a little bit, and maybe you've done it for the right reasons, that's okay. But the point I'm trying to make, you get intoxicated. And then you come to a place where you say, you know what, people believe what they believe for good reasons. No one wants to be an idiot. No one wants to have a meaningless life. No one wants to get depressed. People do what they do because that's the way they survive, and you need to respect that, regardless of how ridiculous it may be. Some people believe that the earth is flat. Well, fine. I'm not going to waste my time, or spend energy changing their minds. I'm not going to give them science. You want to believe that the earth is flat? If you're a good father, you can believe that the earth is, I don't know, is on a pin, Then there comes the family life. And remember, there is no end. Can I tell you a story before I spoke about family? It reminded me of a story that comes from the Islamic or Sufi tradition. We have this guy, I think he's 13th century. I may be mistaken about dates. I'm not really good with facts like that. His name is Khaja Abdullah Ansari. Khaja means master. Abdullah means, Abd means, I think, son of. Allah is God. So you have a master who is a son of God, and his last name is Ansari, which is a tiny little village or town in Iran. He had a teacher. His name was Abul Hasan Kharagani. In his last name, and that's how last names worked for many, many years. It's a borrowing from the village in which you live. So one day, and I'm going to kind of make the story somewhat interesting. One day, his son or his daughter or his wife or a friend goes to him and says, so Abul Hasan, when you die and you find yourself in the presence of God, and if God was to ask you, what kept you from truly becoming a student of truth or wisdom, or being able to worship Yahweh or Jesus or Allah? What are you going to say? And this is his answer. And I know you heard this 1,000 times, well, most of you haven't. And it's a great story because it kind of answers all of our questions about attachment, about the sort of food we eat, about relationships, about what the hell do you do, when is enough enough? He says, when I go back in time, I remember being in my mother's womb. It was dark. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't move. And the only prayer I had when I was in my mother's womb was, let me come out. Let me see light. And eventually God answered my prayers. You know, when my mom went through labor, I came out. And then before I was able to enjoy my freedom from the womb, you know, someone put this cloth around me and very tightly. You know, I was just about to move my arms and legs and move my neck and scream and shout and all that stuff. And then they put this cloth around me and they tied me. I mean, they very, very tightly. And then I realized, man, I'm like a burrito. I can't move.